This is the second podcast I've done that I haven't hosted. So I'm starting this year. I mean, I did Krista's podcast because she was doing Topsoil Insider,
Right.
and she was highlighting topsoil businesses.
Yep.
So I felt obligated to do it, and I was like, I don't want to go on camera, you know. So
Yeah.
I did 2 with her, and she was more storytelling about your background and such. And then I took the leap and said, why don't I start my own podcast?
Yeah.
And it was around technical co-founding, anybody working in the VC or startup community, and I wanted to kind of highlight best practices and lessons learned as really as a catalog. You know, for me personally, like I want to interview really cool people and find out like, how did you do this? Like, what was the secret sauce? And you know, what recommendations would you give other, you know, technical co-founders out there looking to gain an edge? You know, so then I was cherry picking people here, but also talking to some folks in Northern Virginia. You know, I haven't really invested in the software side yet, because once you do that, you can go nationwide.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I usually record 1 or 2 a month on average. I just recorded the first one of this year, so I took 2 months off.
Yeah.
But
It's a lot of work scheduling and lining it up.
Yes. And then doing research and studying and questions and
Exactly.
you know, the logistics. It is a lot. Yeah.
And the people that you've been interviewing, are they people that you've like known from your previous experiences, or is it like just new people, or just like a mixture of?
At first it was, I wanted to target some people around Topsoil Island, you know,
Yep.
Topsoil Beach area, and then eventually I wanted to tap into the Wilmington ecosystem. So I started with Jim Roberts, went to Heather
Yep.
McWhorter,
Yeah.
and then, you know, Jim introduced me to a few cashed out entrepreneurs. Obviously I wanted to highlight some of the CEOs I work with, like I had Ohanify and Ian Patrick on it.
Yep.
And then I said, I have to get some other people in. So then when I was bringing folks down for Elevate, I'm like, you'll build a podcast? They're like, sure. You know, so then my 3 guest speakers, Chris Hornbecker, General Joe Anderson, and now Andrew Sahar, they've all recorded a podcast, so that was cool. And then I've done another CEO buddy of mine from Northern Virginia. I got him down. You know, just spend 3 days at Surf City and, you know, and take a podcast. So I'm trying to entice people. I'm like, no, come down. It's really nice when you record. It's like you're in person and it sounds better, it looks better, and you know. But like, no, you know, I don't want to do it online yet.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I haven't done any virtual ones yet, because for the same reason, it's like it's just not the same.
Right.
Half the fun is just being able to get together and shake hands and walk around the building or do whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah, it's a much better experience in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What made you? What gave you the idea to start Elevate? The coaching.
You know, it was a time I was driving home, because as we mentioned, I come down monthly, you know, for various reasons, and I was listening to a podcast. It was Mel Robbins. And I was flipping around, I was bored, and then she was talking about how her husband started a retreat and how she was proud of him to reinvent himself and look for something new, and he was like semi-retired, and so now he's doing this retreat in California and having all these dudes fly in for whatever reason, you know. It kind of sounded like the Bohemian retreat out there, where they go to the campsite and, you know, talk about stuff around the campfire. I don't know, but it kind of hit me. It's like, wait, I have a hotel in Surf City. I have now an event center, because we built a small event center to kind of help service, you know, parties and wedding receptions.
I got to come up and check it out.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Would love to. Yeah.
And I work in venture capital, and I'm like, I think I could use this as a base to then start putting together lessons learned and like a product, you know, that I could help other founders with the pitfalls and the challenges of taking a business from like 250 to $1 million ARR to like 10 million ARR. So that's kind of where I focus, and started going back doing more content on LinkedIn, really driving home some of the lessons I've picked up from executive education, from my own experiences, you know, from investments that I've made in other
Yeah.
small companies, like eventually you see pattern recognition, like you know what works and
Right.
what doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to kind of package that together into, started out being a 2-day class, and then I figured out like we have way too much content for 2 days.
Yeah.
So now it's a 3-night, 4-day experience where they come in and we check them all in, have a little kickoff, and then
Yep.
2 full days of classwork and in the classroom, and then each night we have a different activity and a party at the end, and then the last night is like the keynote. Send them off with a checklist, basically. Say,
Yeah.
all right, you're the leaders of this organization. Now go put this to work.
How cool.
Yeah.
And like you said, I mean, your experience, who better to be able to provide thoughts and leadership and ideas from, you've had the experience, you started 3 different companies?
2 software companies, and then purchased a kind of a real estate business and turned that around and then sold that one. So technically 3, but really it's 2 software startups.
Got it.
Yeah.
And that's where I really wanted to kind of start with you, is to really learn where you came from and how you got to where you are now. And you wrote this really cool, you've been writing some really good LinkedIn posts, and I've been reading them, and just like the story of starting as a software engineer working for a company,
Yeah.
to then identifying some opportunities or some problems, and then building something from there. So maybe can you start and just tell us a little bit about
Sure.
how you started, and let's start with your first venture.
Well, let's start with why I do what I do.
Okay, that works.
I grew up in Cherryville, North Carolina, which is kind of near Hickory,
Okay.
in that quadrant, Hickory, Lincolnton, Charlotte, kind of in Gaston County. Both sides of my family was entrepreneurial. Each had their own different, unique business that they worked in.
Mm-hmm.
So from an early age, I was exposed to a different kind of work ethic. It wasn't like getting a company at the plant working from 9 to 5. I mean,
Right.
these people, my grandmother owned a florist, which my aunt eventually took over, and my other aunt started another florist business in Kings Mountain. So that was cool. Growing up, and my grandfather would pick me up and would go hang out at the florist, until my dad would pick me up from work, so.
Mm-hmm.
And then my other grandparents, they owned restaurants and things, and my grandfather had an agricultural business at one point, and even my father started his own trunking business after serving in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And my uncle eventually moved to Florida and started a shrimping boat and a boat repair business. So it's like every facet of my family, it just seems like they had some kind of business or entrepreneurial thing.
Yeah.
So, it kind of motivated me to do your own thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what are you going to do? Like put your mark on the calendar kind of thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
I went to App State eventually, graduated, and took a job in the intelligence community. So they were recruiting. It was a class that Appalachian State offered, and I took it as an elective, but it was a case, CoolGen, kind of a case tool technology where effectively you did the systems analysis and it produced the code. It was almost like, a code generator. Now you have AI now, like
Right.
Claude and ChatGPT, that can
Right.
kind of produce code. Well, back then, this tool, you could put in, data elements and design and architecture, and it would actually produce the COBOL code. Then you could put into the application.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, they were using this in the intelligence community, so SAIC
Mm-hmm.
would come down and interview students in that class for potential jobs, and I felt like, wow, that was a pretty cool opportunity.
Yeah.
So I accepted the role, and they put me through a security clearance, and eventually I got approved. That was another whole story. But I finally got my clearance and went to work, and soon after entering that field, I recognized that the average person working in the public sector as a contractor,
Yeah.
there was a lot of opportunity to excel. I remember one of the first she was an admin assistant, but like I remember like my first year at SAIC, she came to me and she goes, "You need to slow down." And I said, "What do you mean?"
You're making us all look bad or making us...
No, she said, "You're putting yourself out of work. You know, you don't need you don't need to work yourself out of work." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
And she says, "Around here, you're not paid on completion. You're paid on your time." So that was like, what? You know, so I'm like, "Oh, okay, it's butts and seats. Got it. All right, so I should just, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon." I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So after a while, you know, you would do your work. I'm like, "Now what?" You know, like, "Oh, well, this guy needs more work." So they would just throw more work at me and was kind of like, "Mikey, you'll do it," you know. So,
Yeah.
And then after a while, it's like, I need a bigger challenge. Like, this doesn't really float my boat. You know, they were putting me on contracts that wasn't that appealing.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted something a little more spicier. And eventually I went to Oracle. Okay. Because, you know, back at App State, you know, I was working, you know, in some Oracle classes, you know, putting together some things, and I really enjoyed that. So I became a certified Oracle database administrator. Okay. And decided to study specific technology around Oracle. Back in it was called real application clusters, but effectively it would allow multiple instances of an application to be hosted in multiple environments. Okay. And to be attached to one data set. So for example, if a building were to have an airplane hit it and it would crash the system, then it would fail over to the other side and it would be, you know, still ongoing. Yep. So I decided to really study that and like, I want to be the best person about this. So I was into the failover and availability side of all that technology. And then 9/11 happened. But even before 9/11 happened, I was kind of, you know, talking to some other people about becoming an independent contractor. And, you know, there was you can make a lot of money. You know, you could set your own hours. And at this time, I was also teaching classes at night. Mm-hmm. And my boss at Oracle did not like that at all. Because his opinion was, if these people want to come learn Oracle, they should go to Oracle University. Because they have this old technology education side of the house that people can pay thousands of dollars to go learn about how to be an Oracle developer or administrator. Yep. But it was Strayer, and Strayer had its own like continuing education program, mm-hmm. and they were teaching Oracle classes over 12 weeks. I'm like, you know, I don't understand why I can't do this at night. Like this is my own time, you know. Yeah. So eventually I started doing it, but he was kind of harassing me about the whole situation, and it was about the same time, you know, I was talking to some friends, and they were like, you know, you really should consider being a 1099. You can make a whole lot of money, and da-da-da. And I was 26 at the time. Okay. And then 9/11 happened. Yep. And then at that point, it was kind of like, I didn't think about it as opportunity. I thought about it as if like risk, and say, if I'm going to work in an environment where, you know, things like this could happen at any point in time, then I need to maximize my time, right. My value. Yep. So that November, I was awarded my first contract at Northrop Grumman as a 1099.
And how'd you get that contract? Like, how did it just being a one-man show? Like, did you go through an agency or something? Or
no, it's just word of mouth.
Just word of mouth.
Yeah, it's really a tight-knit organization at the time, and a lot of people talk. And you know, this one Northrop guy wanted to hire me as his database administrator to kind of migrate a legacy IBM DB database, DB2, over to Oracle. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, you can hire me as an Oracle employee. I'd love to come work on your contract as your lead DBA, but like I'll come as an Oracle employee, because Oracle has a tremendous amount of benefits. And mm-hmm. one of them is like 4 weeks a year of free education. So you can actually go take classes for free. And at the time, like I was a sponge. Like I wanted to take every class under the sun of Oracle. And get every certification. Mm-hmm. But he's like, no, you know, if you're going to come do this job, you know, it's going to be as a Northrop employee. And I said, well, what about as a 1099? And then he goes, yeah, I'll do that for you. So my first contract was for $95 an hour. He gave me a 2-year contract, and it was with the hours. I think it was 2,000 hours a year, or whatever. You do the calculations, they're worth $500,000. So when I quit, I walked into my boss's office and said, I resign. I'm going on to bigger and better opportunities. And he goes, well, where are you going and what are you doing? And I said, I'm going to start my own thing. You know, I've got a contract worth $500,000.
That's unbelievable.
And I never will forget what he said. He started laughing at me, like, and I'm like, he goes, I make more than that in 1 year. And you know, something went off at that point, because I mean, it was just like, all right, is that right? I said, okay, well, I'm going to show you. Like, I know what I'm doing. You just lit a fire.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I took the contract, and eventually I started getting other contracts. And you know, being your own contractor, you can work as many hours as you want. I was killing myself. I was working on average about 2,400 hours a year.
Holy
Making a lot of money, but still, it's like it's a lot of fun. You know, you can pick your contracts, you can pick your time. And of course, you don't get paid when you don't work. So you could take your vacations and stuff, but
Yep.
it's kind of a stressor. Like, oh, I don't get paid time off. Like,
Yep.
I get paid when I work, but that's
Yep.
fine. I'm gonna work.
Yep.
And we made a lot of money. But yeah, then all my friends were like, you know, how are you making all this money? Like, I don't understand. You know, I went back to my Oracle friends and said, you guys are missing out. Like, there's this whole other side of opportunities, not just with Oracle, but, you know, through contracts. And so I started to recruit all of my Oracle buddies to come over and work. So I would find them contracts, and I would, you know, give them their own contract with my LLC, and I became a clearinghouse of all this Oracle talent. So I had a 15-person Oracle practice effectively, where I was working full time, but then I would take 1 day off a month and then reconcile everybody's timesheets and their invoices, and then I would invoice the primes.
Yep.
And then my agreement was I would only pay them when I get paid.
Brilliant.
And then of course I get paid in 30, 45 days, and then I write a check to these guys. But of course I keep a rip in the middle.
Right.
For the administrative side.
Yep.
And eventually, after I had 15 people, I was making just as much money working full-time on a contract
As you were off.
as a clearinghouse for 15 people. Now I doubled my income, and I'm like, oh my God.
That's so cool.
And then about this time, my dad and my stepmom was taking classes at Belmont Abbey to learn to become a computer science engineer. And my dad asked me to get her a clearance. So I put her in for a clearance. And then he lost his job. And eventually they moved up Northern Virginia, and I got her placed as a 1099, but as a software developer. So now I've got a mixture of labor categories. And then I hired my father to kind of come in as a 1099 and help streamline all my Excel spreadsheets into QuickBooks, into more accounting, because he was really good with numbers.
Yeah.
Then eventually, you know, he said, I think you should convert this over to a company. And I'm like, nah, we're making too much money and it's easy. But then the government came out and said, we're no longer accepting third-tier subs, because technically I was a subcontractor to the prime. That's right. Level 1.
Yep.
Or level 2, basically, prime, sub.
Yep.
And then
your subs.
And then if I had a sub to me, they were eliminating that layer and trying to save money, because they felt like, you know, and I guess, you know, with any other layers, you have overhead and G&A, that expenses that you could save. But so then I converted all those 1099s into W-2 employees.
Got it.
Around 2005. And at that point, it was off to the races. There was this guy, Devin, who I believe went to Illinois. He got a clearance, and he was a junior developer, but he was like really good. And we hired Devin, and we hired this other developer, and we started building proof of concepts around Ruby on Rails, because everything was JavaScript at the time. And so we built this Ruby on Rails architecture, and like the organization we worked for in the Intel community went nuts. And they're like, oh, good gracious, we need to build applications using this framework and this architecture. So we're like, okay. So then we started hiring people and training them on Ruby on Rails and Oracle. And over like a 3-year period, we scaled our company to $14 million, 60 employees.
Holy.
And I mean, it just went bonkers. And we won so many awards because of the way that we were developing architecture and software for this customer. And it was cool that our technology was being used in theater. So as the military operations were rolling out and you're seeing things in the headlines, you're like, they're using our technology.
Oh my gosh.
So it's like, it's super cool to feel
Yeah.
like you're part of the supply chain, that in the end it's like enabling things to happen in real time. That was about the time where I started taking classes at Harvard Business School. I took this OPM class, and Unit 1, because I wanted to learn more about the business, because you're working in the business. I need to learn how to work on the business, because I didn't have an MBA. I got a master's in engineering management, but it was not an MBA. And so the OPM program is like an executive MBA at Harvard. So they throw a bunch of content at you. And one of the things we learned about was mergers and acquisitions, and how important it is as a strategy to not just be organic for your growth model, that you should look at inorganic growth, for acquisitions. Or if you think about eventually what you want to do with your business is to be acquired, you have to build to sell. So we learned some strategies about that. And I went back after Unit 1, I put together advisory board, I hired some really veterans in the Intel community. We had one meeting, and this is about the time Obama got elected, and there was some changes happening already in the back end. It was not the wheels were coming off, but it was certainly rattling. The pedal was down, but it was like, rattling. And I just started asking some questions and said, can we repeat what we've done here for the DoD? How hard would it be? Who are the main players, and what are the expected time frames, and things of that nature. And after that meeting, I just determined, I said, you know what, maybe we should explore sale, because I was fatigued. There were some things happening in my personal life that wasn't working out. I had some culture problems with a couple of my teammates, and one of my contractors that I hired ended up starting his own company and hired more contractors, and it created a little bit of a issue with me.
Not bad.
So it was like, I felt like the knives were out,
Yeah.
And you got something of like strategic value, and you've got a brand, you've got past performance. So I started to interview some other companies that recently had sold, and said, why did you sell? Who did you sell to? Who did you talk to, and who did you end up going with, and why? And why were these other people, what scared you away from there? And what broker did you use? So after interviewing 3 or 4 of those companies, I had enough data to say, all right, I know who to talk to, I know who has money, I know who's looking, and I know why. So I felt like some of these companies may have been burned because, like, I really want that company, but then they chose to go private equity route or something. And that's the strategy. We put a strategy together, and I went down the path with Raymond James, and ended up selling that company for $24 million.
How cool, man.
Yeah, and and again, it was life-changing for me.
Absolutely.
But again, it was kind of like, now what?
Yep.
Because once the fire is lit, you can't really put it out. You have to do something else. You just repivot your energy somewhere else. And I worked for the acquirer for a couple years, but eventually I took some time off and then learned, the venture capital side, because I had 12 months to do nothing, and I'm like, I have to do something.
Yeah, tell me like what psychologically that's like, going from just working, grinding, building something, and then all of a sudden, like, you wake up the next day and you're like,
very, very depressing. Very depressing.
Okay.
I tell founders all the time, before you even think about selling your company, you need to understand that you can't go from 100 to 0, because it is a depressing journey. You have to have something to do. There for a while, I was day trading. I'm like, oh, I could be a day trader. Like that lasted about 3 weeks. I'm like, no, this sucks, But it's almost like a curse, because if you're a true entrepreneur and you're in the game and you're involved at a very high level with a bunch of people doing really cool stuff. To go from that to nothing,
Yeah.
it's painful. And I've talked to ex-athletes, like up in Virginia, I started working out with these ex-Redskins, and they would tell me the same thing. It's like, when you're in the NFL, you're in in the show, like everything is like there for you, and you've got this camaraderie, this team, and then to go from that to nothing, it's depressing. And even the military is the same way. I talked to many military veterans, and they experience the same pain. Of course, there's a transition, sometimes for the military to kind of introduce them to the private sector from public sector. But as you know, those were night and day culture shifts, and it's hard to kind of integrate yourself going from high energy, high vibration, mission critical type decisions. To doing absolutely nothing.
What should I have for lunch today?
Right.
It's like the biggest decision,
Yeah, I mean, you can only work out so much.
Right.
You can only play golf or travel. So often, but you have to have something to do. Which is kind of why I joined a local VC group in Tyson's Corner, Virginia, Blue Venture Investors.
And so you did that after your first one? Okay, got it. Yep.
Yeah, I had a 12-month non-compete, so I was teaching classes at George Washington. I was an entrepreneur resident for Georgetown, and that's how I met Jay Gamble at Blue Venture through Georgetown.
Got it.
And then he invited me to come join his. It was a super angel group, effectively, where you've got these former business owners that have cash, and they get together and they review deal flow. But of course, they wanted me because I was the techie guy. So every time a deal would come through, they were like, Stroupe, here, can you do the due diligence and go interview the CTO and tell us the tech specs? And I'm like, oh my God. After doing a couple of them, I'm like, I'm not getting paid for this.
Yeah, it should not be like that.
Right, it's like, you're doing this on your own time. And they're like, but I'm learning, but it's like, but I don't want to invest in this company, but I still have to do this. And, so I decided to go back. So when my non-compete ended, I went back into the Intel community to start my second company, Sequoia. And that was geared more towards cloud development, because at the time we were shifting from the centralized databases to more of a decentralized cloud model. And we got in tight with Amazon, AWS at the time, and hired a bunch of software engineers and got them certified through AWS. And we helped the Intel community build one of the first air-gapped clouds for their network. And that experience really compounded other opportunities down the road, because we ended up building some software that helped ship software assets from the unclassified side to the classified side. Because what happened was, when Amazon took this technology to the high side, and then the government kind of did its own form factoring of it to make sure that it met the requirements that they work in, they didn't have a development of that. It was just pure production. So they were throwing things over the fence, and it was breaking. And Amazon's like, what the heck? This is your fault, government. And government's like, nope, it's your fault. You should work with your people to help assimilate the technology in our space in order to work. You guys can figure it out, kind of thing. And so we felt like there was a niche there. So me and this guy Steven decided to kind of build. First, it was a software documentation, where we documented all the differences between an Amazon public cloud and the Amazon classified cloud. And we were going to kind of do teaching and teach these software companies, like Salesforce or ServiceNow or whoever, how to integrate their technology into this area. But then after a while, I'm like, how easy would it be to kind of create our own emulation of this? He goes, not too hard. So then we started to take all those differences and build, think of it like a skin that sits over top of the public AWS cloud. So inside AWS cloud, we built a container that basically was an emulation of the high side. So now people can go in there and put their technology and test it to see if it would work. And if it would break, then of course they would go back and do all the testing and make sure it works. Then they would take that version of the asset and then deploy it to the high side, because a lot of people didn't have these cleared individuals, and they would have to team with Raytheon or Lockheed Martin to kind of like integrate it. So this gave the leverage back to the software company to kind of do that prep work before they shipped it up to the high side. And we would charge software as a service model, a subscription. And,
Love it.
But we were early because, again, a lot of people wouldn't invest the money to do that until they had a contract on the high side, and that was the key. And you know, it took a while for that technology to. I mean, today it's everywhere. You know, but back then, you know, between 2014 and 2018, you know, we pitched and sold this thing to everybody all over the Intel community. And you know, the government said Amazon should pay for it. Amazon says the government should pay for it. And eventually we said, fine, the software vendor will pay for it. And the software vendor said, not so fast. Until we get a guaranteed ROI, then we'll invest. So it's like nobody wanted to pay for it.
Yeah. Like a chicken or the egg thing. It's like, I need this to do this. But
Right. Yeah. But it was a great experience. It gave us an exposure into the private sector, because of course, when you're working as a government contractor, you dream of having the freedom and expansion and the tools and technology and variety of things of the private sector, because public sector is very restrictive to work in. So that gave us that outlet, and we're like, oh God, this is great, you know. But eventually I sold that company. In 2019, I sold 75% to private equity.
Nice. And did you retain some of that yourself?
Oh yeah, I still own 25%.
Cool.
Yeah, so that was a different strategy I learned. So that's another thing I teach in the Elevate, you know, retreat, boot camp, whatever, is there's different methods of selling.
Yep.
You know, you could sell to a strategic and have an earn out and go through that process of the M&A journey, or you could sell to private equity and then roll forward a portion. Yep. So I've had opportunity to do both, and of course private equity. You know, the goal is that your 25% is going to give you a second bite at the apple that the first one was, or near it. You know, so that's what we did. So hopefully, I don't know, knock on wood, maybe they'll sell this year, but we'll see.
I'd love to hear about the difference of starting your second company versus the first one, because my assumption is that the first one is you're working hard and things are just, you know, it's just kind of like organically, like hiring some people, you know, get more revenue, get more contracts. Okay, I can hire people, and now we're making some money. I could kind of like, you know, maybe hire some leadership or like some like administrative support. And it's like a very just step by step, whereas maybe the second time it's like, okay, like, you know, I've done this before, I've exited, you know, I've got some resources and I might have a group of people. What was the difference of, you know, starting that second business?
Before I launched the second business, I, you know, again, going through that depression phase of losing your identity, because I think a lot of us as business owners wrap our identity and personality into our business.
100%.
And that's so very hard, because like when you sell your company, it's like selling your soul. And I tell folks all the time, I'm like, you got to separate the two. Like, this is you as an individual, your personality, and this is your company, two different assets. But you know, it's like if you put your blood, sweat, and tears in something, it becomes personal. So it took a while to kind of unwind that depression. And it kind of hit my confidence, like, you know, you can't do this again. You know, like you would be a fool to try this again. And, you know, when I sold the first company, the acquirer, you know, did a lot of things I told them not to do. Because you build a culture, and then if they destroy the culture and then people leave, you feel like you cause somebody to have pain and sorrow. And when you made a decision, even though you had financial benefit, but then all your employees ended up, you know, scattering, you feel, you know, like it's your fault. So after kind of like getting the confidence of, okay, I can enter the market again, and you could go back and try to rehire the same people or hire new people. because you don't want them to lose confidence and trust in your ability. Of course, you don't want to feel used either, like cattle kind of thing.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, I felt like, you know how like you have a first kid and you invest in the toys and the clothes and all the other things and the crib and yada, yada, yada. Kind of like you feel like, oh, you know what? Maybe we'll have another kid just to get a return on investment of all this.
Yeah, we've got these
stuff
fixed
that we
costs.
bought. Yeah, right.
Got to absorb this cost.
Yeah. So I kind of had that feeling for the second company. And I'm like, well, I might as well try it again because I've got the network, I've got this, I've got knowledge of that, and da 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 da.
Absolutely.
And it would be easier to kind of like do it. And so I partnered with the guy and I said, let's go. And this time I had a co-founder and I said, go. And we quickly ramped up to 25 employees. And I'm like, wow, this is much easier than the last time. It's like you don't have to do everything yourself. You can delegate and have people take ownership and kind of, you know, assign that responsibility to somebody else. And it was easy. And of course, at the same time, I kept the investment side hustle as well. So I was running Sequoia. I was doing the investments, you know, so that kind of kept me engaged about 50 hours a week versus the 80 before. So I was good with that. Got to keep my mind sharp and focused. And then about that time, the government was going through a transition where they were changing their acquisition models and how they award contracts. And that was huge. And now, like for example, if it took me 3 months to hire and place an asset on a contract, now it would take me 6 because of the way they were doing things. So that meant I need to hire more people to kind of help with the middle layer, which meant I would lose more profit because the government doesn't want higher rates. They want the companies to absorb their bureaucratic model, but not give them the extra overhead that it took for you to navigate it, you know?
Right.
It's like, what? It's like, you want the best of both worlds. So I noticed that, and then I'm like, okay, we need to be different. So then that's when we went down the path of creating this culture around cloud and being the cloud leaders of the Intel community. And we did partnerships with Salesforce and Amazon and eventually Microsoft. And so we brought all this big technology into our culture. And then, of course, it gave an outlet to all the employees to learn this stuff because most companies in the government sector, it's kind of a stifling environment where you don't really have a lot of opportunities to grow and to pivot and to do new things. Like, if you're a developer, they're going to make you work as a developer. And like, what if I want to be an administrator? What if I want to learn how to do DevOps? Do it on your own time. It's like, you know, go to work as a developer. So they pigeonhole you. So, but we had an open, flexible environment where it's like, you can be whatever you want. And if you want to go to training, go take training hours. So we baked in like 80 hours of training every year that they could go to. And then of course we had seminars all the time. We would do these tech talks. And we would broadcast it to everybody in the community. So then we had other employees from other companies would show up at our tech talk, and I'm like, oh, you looking for a job? You know? You know, so we used that as a recruiting tool. But nobody was caring to do this. I'm like, I don't care. This is cool stuff. You know, beer, pizza, and technology. You know, what could be better? And we would go to like 8, 9 at night. You know, and these guys loved it. Like, it just gave them an outlet to learn new stuff. And we were doing it for free. But it you know, it gave us the incentive to kind of build a new culture, do something different, but for the same customer. And as much as we would love to have changed their methodology of how they use technology and how they acquire technology, you can't change City Hall, as they say. And the government is the same way. They've been doing business a certain way since, you know, a long time ago. You know, so it's like you can't effectively change their mindset of how to acquire, deploy technology. All you can do is try to answer the mail and say, this is what we do, this is what we have access to. If you're interested, let us know. That's a lot. That took a lot to adjust to. But we started doing other stuff, and that's why I kept my investing hat on the side. And We also dabbled in cryptocurrency at the time. So
Okay.
this is around 2016. We bought a bunch of rigs that we built in our office, and we started mining Ethereum.
No way.
This is when Ethereum was like $50. And we were mining Ethereum, but we were also learning how the Ethereum works. So we developed our own Sequoia coin, and we didn't
No
deploy
way.
it. Yeah. And then, but we did create like a blockchain architecture to help government operate some of its contracts. Because again, when you would read things about how they would lose billions of dollars in Iraq, or they would just send crates of money and all of a sudden it would just disappear. And then they're like, where did that money go? I'm like, well, if it would have been on the blockchain, you could have figured it out.
Yeah, because you could trace it through the
Yeah,
whole.
yeah. So I wrote articles. One of them got published in CNBC about how the federal government should use blockchain. This was back in 2018.
No way.
Yeah, so it's like, then we went and created this blockchain as a service model, and the government said, no way, we're not interested in that. Again, it's like we're doing this, we were building these technologies, we were super early.
Yeah.
And it kind of created a little frustration and resentment in me, because as I'm doing investing and learning all this new emerging technology, and then trying to create architectures for the government, and the government's like, no thanks. Yeah, it's kind of depressing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why one reason I decided to sell in 2019. I just said it's time. So
I had no idea about the blockchain and the crypto stuff. Was a part of your past. That's really.
yeah, we dabbled in new technology and tried to learn as much as we can about new stuff. And yeah, we pitched this blockchain as a service to CACI, because CACI had the Pacific Fleet. So I didn't know like every ship is its own contract vehicle.
I did not
Just
know
like
that
every
either.
F-16 is its own contract vehicle.
Okay.
And of course, the vehicle acquires things, and there's people that work for it. So it's like it's a whole entity,
Right.
effectively.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I posed to CACI was, if there's a ship in South Korea, for example, that needed a part, and there's a ship that's 200 nautical miles from that ship that had the part, but their inventory system that they had doesn't know what they have. What do? Well, they have to go back to Hawaii, because that's their base, to get this part. So, I mean, you mean to tell me they have to travel all the way back to get this part and then go back to where they were? Yes, that's how it works. What if they had connectivity, IoT stuff, to this other ship, and they had access to their database or their inventory, and they're like, oh, I have this part. Oh, great, let's rendezvous, you can have it.
Yeah.
Then in 2 hours, they can rendezvous and trade the part and go back to where they were without having to save a round trip to Hawaii.
All the way back to Hawaii.
Yeah. They liked the idea and the concept, and we built something for that, and it worked. We proved the point, and we actually hired this crypto guy from Miami who was building crypto solutions for the hemp industry because at the time there was no banks that could collect the money from all the marijuana.
Yeah.
So they were using crypto, and I'm like, I want that guy to come and build this prototype for us. How much would, nothing to do with like marijuana or hemp.
Right.
He's like, what is this for? The federal government. But the proof of concept was cool and it worked. But then they went back to their people and like, no, we don't want to do it. And I'm just like, that. You get frustrated because like you present, there's all these opportunities and big challenges and problems. And you just present one solution after another, and nobody wants to do it because the business model is butts and seats. Like you're going up against the whole industry that makes money on selling time. They're not trying to buy a solution. They want to sell you hours on building a solution. So it's like, swimming upstream.
It's a totally different shift. I want to repeat what you said. It's I'm selling you hours to build a solution as opposed to just selling you the solution.
Correct.
Like that's a completely different paradigm.
Even though it can save billions of dollars over periods of time.
Exactly.
But it's like their acquisition model isn't built for that.
Unbelievable. People ask me, they're like, what's your ideal client? And I'm like, first off and foremost, somebody that's going to appreciate what we do and listen to the advice that we have, right? Because to your point, it's like, if we've got a team of people that are working for a client, working their butts off, coming up with good ideas, and they're consistently like, nah, we're not going to change. We're just going to keep doing what we want. Like, it's going to drive them crazy. My employees are probably going to want to like go work somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so I just thought that was a cool parallel to what you were saying.
Yeah.
And
it's very frustrating.
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the best clients are the ones that appreciate what you do, and they're like, oh yeah, would love to try this idea. Like, let's give it a shot. What are the risks, if it doesn't work, kind of thing. And we got, A, B, C, or D. But yeah, I could feel how that's frustrating.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I wanted to talk about, me having a fractional CFO business and like advisory. How have you worked with financial advisors or accountants or CPAs throughout your through your startups?
Yeah, it's so important. There's no way I would have been able to do what I did without having the support, help, and guidance of accountants, financial professionals along the way. There was an individual, his name is Dean, and he helps government contractors, small businesses. He helps reconcile their books every single month. Or you can do it on a quarterly basis or a month, just whatever price range you have.
Yeah.
And he'd also build the cost volumes for your proposals. Because the federal government, one of the things they always do is they want to see your cost model. So you'd have to fill out this intrusive information about what are your benefits, how much do you pay for them, what is your payroll, what is this, what is that, and it's like, wow, they're really inspecting your business because they want to make sure like you're not trying to like squeeze the government unnecessarily. They want to know like is the money we're paying you going to the areas where you say they're going to, and he knew this backwards and forwards. Like he had all the templates, he knew exactly what they were. And any type of audits that you would have is what they would talk, but he would help you through that because he knew everything about the set of books that the government was expecting. But he's also a CPA, and he also helped you with your financials. And of course, I hired him on a monthly basis. Even though we did our own, payroll, we had our timesheets and we did our reconciliation against the timesheets and the payroll and all that stuff and the invoicing. But then, to turn it over to accounting to make sure it's all legit, he would do all that heavy lifting. And then when it come time to sell, of course, their due diligence is tough because there's a lot of questions and documentation that a potential buyer would need. And without having the support of folks like yourself doing that heavy lifting, it's impossible. Because unless you want to go out and hire a CFO or a team of financial professionals in-house, which, could run you millions of dollars, you could just easily just outsource that to either a fractional CFO or a CPA or engage in like a monthly retainer to help you with those type of services. Because what I learned is you don't need those services all the time. So it would be a poor decision to have that on your payroll 24/7. But if you bring those folks in, like those highly skilled, highly professional individuals who can kind of pull those resources together and accomplish those goals, that's all you need. Yeah, it's worth its weight in gold, effectively.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I appreciate that plug. But did your businesses ever get to the size where you had a full-time CFO or
No.
So you ran both of those businesses with outsourced advisory?
My first company, my dad kind of did the director of finance and contracts and HR. So, he basically worked the job of two people. But he would do all that reconciliation. He would help the contracts. And of course, when we did bid proposal and capture stuff, there was a team of people, including myself, that kind of would build all those volumes out. Yeah. But he would supply the cost volumes and the financial data. And in Sequoia, I did everything myself. I was the CFO and the CEO.
No way.
But of course, I used Dean,
right,
to kind of help fill the gaps. But by that time, you already learned all the data and how to do it. So I had all the templates. So just continued down that model, and it worked really well. So,
And at that point, when you were running Sequoia, I would assume you were spending 100% of your time working on the business, or were you like actually doing like engineering work?
no, at this point, I decided not to be a deployed asset and be an executive.
Yeah.
Like my first company, I was dual hat. You know, I was making a ton of money because I mean, obviously, the money I billed on contract, I would take that and then pay myself a salary also to be an executive. So we had large distributions. We were S corp, so we would do distributions for tax reasons, and then there's a ton of money left over. So I'm like, what do I do with this money? Do we acquire a company, or do we pay ourselves a dividend? You know, oh yeah, we'll just distribute ourselves. So, but with Sequoia, you know, I had the model, I had the process, I had the systems already in place.
Right.
So I just felt like it wasn't as taxing, which gave me the time to go do more investing.
Right.
So the money I was making from Sequoia in distributions after taxes, I would deploy that into venture capital deals.
How many deals or businesses are you invested in now at this point?
I've invested in over 50 total.
Wow.
I try to do about 6 or 7 a year.
Okay.
You know, there's two types of investors that work kind of at my level that manages their own money. So Cape Fear Ventures is effectively the venture capital arm of a family office that I've created. So I've got like public equity, you know, like stocks and other things. I've got private equity, which is the venture capital stuff, and then I've got real estate. So I kind of oversee this whole flywheel mechanism where I take money from one and ship it in another, and then take proceeds of this, and then of course, you know, if I sell, I have equity in other companies. When I get an exit, I kind of pop it in the model and see.
How cool.
You know, because I'm trying to like grow the model, you know, at a certain rate per year kind of thing. But but yeah, going back to your question, I've invested in about 50. So there's two types of investors. There's the the folks that kind of take their time and really want to kind of, you know, look at things through an operator lens, like I do. Since I've been an operator twice, I try to deploy more than capital. I want to give them advisory support. I want to give them resources and capabilities and knowledge of saying, look, you've got a person here that's kind of been in your shoes. So if you need me to help you, if you have hard questions, if you have, you know, resources that you're considering, talk to me, let me know. So a lot of my investments call me all the time and say, what do you think about this? Or, you know, I've got a co-founder that wants to exit and I don't want to litigate, you know, how can we get them out? Or, you know, it happens all the time, you know. So I feel great because it gives me a purpose that, yes, take my money. I want to be an investor in your company, but it also gives me an outlet to try to help them, you know, and sometimes they hire these advisors, they get paid per month to do this, and I advocate, no, you should lean more onto your investors because they have a vested interest.
Absolutely. And
capital is scarce, and it's one of your most important assets. And why would you burn capital to talk to advisors when you can just lean in on your investors?
And especially an investor like you who's been there, done that. And, you know.
So the other type of investor is a spray and pray model, where they'll take a bunch of money and then they'll just give you 25, 50K checks in a lot of different companies just to be on the balance sheet. And the rule of thumb in venture is like 10% hit. Like 1 out of every 10 is going to pay for the other 9 losers. Yeah. So what I try to do is go through a series of checks and balances. Again, we talk about trends, we talk about green flags and red flags and what works, what doesn't work. Yeah. I have my own due diligence process in every investment I make, and there's certain hurdles that they have to have. And of course, I talk to the founders and the management team, and I want to make sure they're locked in. And I want to make sure that they're legit, they have the experience. And you know, I say it's the 4 T's: the team, which is the management team and leadership team. It's the technology. I need to know, is this technology sound? Is there a patent? Is there provisional going to be filed? You know, what's the moat? You know, what's the competition looks like? Why are you so special than everybody else?
Yeah.
It's the TAM, you know, the total addressable market.
Yep.
So I want to make sure that there's asymmetric upside in placing a bet with those technologies. So it's very important that you kind of look at all that spectrum. And once you go through this process of looking at it, including a runway, making sure that you're not a full-time fundraiser. Like I want to know if you have enough capital to work for 2 months to prove your model.
Yeah.
You know, and then I look at the company as like, are you discovery or are you executing or accelerating? You know, so I try to lean more towards the accelerating because I want to know their model works, like it's been validated, that you have traction, which is the other T. Team, technology, traction, and TAM. So traction is the customer discovery and development. So if you don't have customers, if you don't have validation, if you don't have traction, then it doesn't matter. Your team could be good, your technology could be good, but it's like you don't have that lift. So it all has to come together through that discovery phase. And I advocate like bootstrapping and going to get grants and non-dilutive routes, and perhaps there's super angels that you can do, you know, certain things that's rewarding for both the business and the investor. But true VC money kind of comes in at that acceleration phase. Like once the model's been proven,
Right.
now it's time to really
Throw some fuel on the fire kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so of the 50 investments that you have, how many would you say you're like an active board member or like actively involved in the business?
Yeah, so I'm fairly active in almost all of them, but the level of activity depends on the team, the owner, and the founder. Every one of them knows my background, because one of the things I do is kind of set expectations up front and say, look, here's what I expect out of you. Here's what you can expect out of me. So you know my background, know my skill, because obviously they'll do their own due diligence through LinkedIn and other areas to say, we want you on our cap table because we think you can provide leverage. You've got public sector exposure, you've invested in SpaceX, and you know, you invest in these other space companies, and a lot of times the space companies like to have those types of people on their cap table because it shows validation.
Yeah.
So even the brand level of what we're doing is being recognized, and just to be on the cap table is like, look, we've got him as an investor, you know.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But yeah, it does help, but to have the ability to pick up the phone and call me anytime, there's only a few that have that.
Right.
You know, like I'm on the board of some of these companies, you know, and I'm pretty engaged. Like there's one company, I call the founder every week. We have such a great relationship. The entire company, I love them. And, you know, when I'm down here in Wilmington, I'll go see them. But we have such a great relationship, and he'll call me and ask any questions like, oh, I've got this employee, what do you think? You know, or, you know, I'm thinking about doing this, what do you think? So it's like, it's cool to have that kind of relationship that they'll call and get my opinion on something before making a decision. You know, so it just depends. So you can have a very interactive relationship, or you can have like a monthly, quarterly relationship, but at some point the communication really depends on the team itself and how engaging they want me to be. Because sometimes they're like, just to have you here is good enough. And I'm like, okay, so I'm fine.
And what's that shift like from being the founder, the CEO, the one that's like really driving and running, to then being, you know, taking a step back to be like, all right, I'm more of an advisor. Like, is it hard to hold yourself back sometimes, or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm sure it's like, put me in, you know, or.
Yeah. Well, not to call it a curse, but like once you've got this competitive desire to outperform, outproduce, to hit the numbers and the milestones and know how to operate, it never leaves. But I find purpose today in kind of having relationships with multiple companies. So instead of working in one company, in one industry, and one objective, I now have 100. So it's like I can split my time amongst other companies and kind of give that expertise and delegate that authority to their decision making and say, well, if you want my opinion, I can tell you, here's what I would do. And then let them execute. I don't travel as much anymore. So I'm like, yeah, go travel, go to Vegas, go to the conference, go see the customer, do this, do that, whatever. Let me know how it goes.
Yeah.
It's like, if you want me to go with you, I will.
Yeah.
But like, I don't really want to. But it's cool. It's like they love that because they're young and they have all the energy. And of course, I still have a lot of energy. But like, if I can focus my time and energy, on helping create a portfolio of very highly successful organizations and help all those founders hit their milestone, whatever that objective is, I find purpose and peace in that versus just focusing on one. Like I said, working at TRS, my first company, and Sequoia, my second company, and I spent 20 some years in the public sector. And I've had a desire to kind of like expand into the private sector because there's this whole world of new technology that's just untapped. And now with AI and agentic services, I find great pleasure in learning new technology and then finding ways to integrate that into every business model that I work with, and try to help them discover new ways of creating new revenue capture and new customers. So.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What would you say on the your professional side, what would you say that you're most proud of over your career?
My professional side?
Yeah.
I think having the confidence, because in Elevate we talk about surrounding yourself with the right people and removing the toxic environments. And it's like, if you want to be a millionaire, surround yourself with 5 other millionaires. Or if you want to be a good startup founder, leader, go surround yourself with other people and learn what they do and figure it out, kind of thing. I was an engineer coming out of school. I left a small rural North Carolina town against all odds. People thought I was crazy. People said, "Oh, you'll be back," and went into this foreign area, not knowing anybody, and kind of like building something out of nothing, just off of the basic ingredients I've learned as a child through my family, and being able to find a way to repeat some of those patterns and then pivot into new industries like venture capital and real estate, building real estate, that was an interesting 5-year period. But just having the ability to kind of do these things and now kind of sit back and have a choice of saying, yeah, you could retire, you could travel, you could go do these things, but then choosing not to, choosing to serve, choosing to give back. And find a way to still kind of scratch that itch of being, hyper competitive and investing and helping people win. That really is what I look forward to. And, just having the ability to kind of operate at that capacity and that level, and, being able to still say I've got great health and things there. I mean, I've been through a lot of personal tragedies in my family, and it's been a tough journey, and it's nobody prepares you for that. So just having the fortitude and the discipline for my dad, and having the ability to execute at this level, that's what I'm most rewarded and proud of.
How cool.
Obviously, my kids is my number one, so I'm like, I'm so proud of them, and seeing them develop into some really good human beings and doing the things they want to do is paramount to being a father above everything else. But from a professional business point of view, it's got to be that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you've got such a great story, and I really didn't realize how the whole deal, and it was so cool to hear you tell it. And you're a great speaker. I didn't have to ask too many questions when you made it easy on me.
No, this has been a great experience. I appreciate the opportunity. Like I said, this is officially the second podcast that I've been on as a guest, and I've purposely been on your side of the table because I've never really wanted to talk about me. I actually hate talking about myself. I despise it. I would rather be on your side of the table and like, tell me more. I want to learn from you. How did this work? And this, and like, you don't want to know about me. But made a choice to try to explore, put yourself out there, be a little vulnerable, and
Yeah.
try to see if my background and capabilities can help other people. So,
Well, thank you, and I hope we can look forward to getting to know you even more. I mean, I feel like we just scratched the surface on so many things, and
yeah, absolutely.
so I look
Yeah.
forward to seeing you around more and getting to know you more.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Richard.
Yep.
Appreciate it.